Welcome to Bird Seeds, and as always, thank you guys so much for listening. I'm going to take this one in a direction I didn't originally plan for it to go in, but it kind of inspired me to do another book review on a book I read not too long ago that I've been meaning to do a review on, but I've been kind of hesitating on it. And I'll get into why and all that kind of stuff. But where this started with this concept for today is I was talking to somebody about sort of more existential thinking. Like when you're doing a task that's right in front of you, you're making a decision based on something that's right in front of you. You can make that decision on that. But if you're focused on the thing right in front of you, that decision or that whatever you're doing there, that problem you're solving may not be in the direction of where you're trying to go. There's many solutions to those problems, and you might solve it in a way that's contradictory to your bigger goals, right? So if you're looking down the road further, you're looking further out in the future, whenever you're going to solve those challenges that are in front of you, you're going to solve them with the coloring of what you're trying to do long term. And sort of this thought of, that's the existential thought of like, why are we here? What are we doing? Well, what's our purpose? And that's something I'm trying to go through as I'm redefining success, as I've talked about, in previous episodes where I'm deciding, okay, what is it that makes me a successful human being? Whether that's being a dad, whether that's being a husband, whether that's being, a hobbyist, musician, whatever it might be, whether that's being an entrepreneur, whether that's being a provider for my family and for everything and building wealth and all those kind of things. Like as I redefine what that success is, I'm looking bigger down the picture. And to be frank, I'm having a hard time trying to figure out what it all means, working through it. That's okay. We don't have to have the answers as long as we're striving for them and we're working towards those goals. But it reminded me of a lesson I learned from my parents when I was learning how to drive. And I think there's a really great analogy there. I was driving down the road and, I think pretty sure it was my dad in the car with me, and I was probably swerving a lot, right? So the car in front of me, I was following the car in front of me, and they move this way, I move this way, and it's kind of a jerky ride. So my dad asked me, what are you looking at right now? When you're driving down the road, what are you looking at? I said, well, the car in front of me, I don't want to hit them. I want to slow down with them. I want to stay in line with them. He goes, it's important to see the car in front of you because yes, that's the closest thing you're going to hit. But I want you to look at the horizon. I want you to look all the way down the road. Look at that car as far as you can see. By doing that, you're still going to see the car in front of you. It's still in your vision, but now you're going to anticipate the road curving or the stoplight up there or the stop traffic up there or whatever it may be. And now when you make your decisions and you're following the car in front of you, you're not just following the one car and your decisions don't make a lot of sense. You're following where you're going to wind up going and you're still going to follow that car. And it's going to be a much smoother ride and everything you do is going to get you towards that long-term goal. And what an analogy, right? Like what an analogy in life in general and in, what's the point? What's the bigger picture? We focus just on the challenges in front of us. They feel huge. They feel insurmountable, but they're not. It's all about what's down the road. It's all about making those little decisions now on these smaller things to get us in position for the things down the road. So it's kind of just a epiphany I had that I think is super impactful and super important for us to learn from these lessons. The other analogy that's in there that I think is really good is if you're on a long distance trip, you're driving from Baltimore to Chicago, which I made that trip many, many times. And you're focused on the long-term drive, 12, 14-hour drive, and you hit traffic or you make a wrong turn or you get off on the wrong exit. If you're focused on a long-term drive, that might add 15 or 20 minutes to your trip. In the noise, in the scheme of the trip, it really doesn't matter. You have plenty of time to make up for it. You can drive a little bit faster, a little bit further down the road. You can take a shortcut. You can whatever. You might find something. It's part of the journey to get there. Not a big deal. But if you're so focused on each mile marker that you're going to hit and you make one wrong turn and that one wrong turn takes you 3 miles out, it feels like the end of the world because you're focused on the 1 mile marker at a time and this 3 miles kind of killed you. Doesn't matter that maybe you found a shortcut. Maybe you avoided an accident. Maybe you didn't. Maybe it did take you 15 minutes longer. In a scheme of a 12 to 14-hour drive, who cares? What does it matter? So it's the same thing. When we focus on the things right in front of us and the short-term goals, again, short-term goals, very important. They're the things that get us to our long-term goals. But we focus strictly on the short-term goal and we lose sight of the long-term goal, everything feels so intense, so important, so insurmountable, so stressful, so anxiety-inducing. Focus on the big picture. You have time to make up for any losses, for any misses you have. You got time to make up for them. But when you do things collectively in the way to get to the bigger picture, you will succeed. Now, I mentioned a book. So what are we going to talk about? So those are two really great lessons, I think, that fit that sort of bigger picture of what's the point? Why do we do? Why do I work so hard? What am I trying to get to? Right? There's a book. It's a really great book. I highly recommend it. Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. It's a pretty famous book. It's a hard read. I'm not going to lie. It's not an easy read, especially the first half of the book. It's a very challenging read, and not so much in like technical jargon or writing style or anything like that. The content's pretty rough. I'll be totally frank on it. Prankle, haha. But to be totally frank on it, it's rough. I'm also going to say I want to read it again, and I'm going to read it in a book versus the audiobook, which I did this time. Mainly because the narrator in the audiobook has a pretty thick accent. Personally, I find that to be distracting, and I lose focus driving around doing my things, and I some sort of find myself daydreaming and reversing and following back up. So if I read it again, when I read it again, I want to read it in an actual physical book or on my Kindle or something like that, because I think I'll be able to focus on it better. But I do recommend it, whether it's audiobook or not. So what is it? So Man's Search for Meaning is Viktor Frankl. Viktor Frankl was a psychiatrist. He was a medical doctor. Pre-World War II, he actually had the opportunity to go to the U.S. during the war. He decided not to because he didn't want to leave his family. He wound up in Auschwitz. He wound up in concentration camps during the war. He was Jewish. He had his whole life work, his memoir that he had written. He shoved it in his pocket. The guards destroyed it, took it from him. He wrote it from memory while in concentration camps. Unbelievably inspiring story. I said the first half of the book is a hard read. It's detailed pretty day-to-day of life in a concentration camp and the just awful conditions, the awful death, the awful mental, like just everything about that, just straight up awful, terrible. It's pretty direct an explanation of it. I found it very emotionally challenging to listen to. Glad I did. Glad I've listened to it, but it is a heavy read. It is not a lighthearted read. But then he goes into the second half of the book, which is more about the theories and that I don't say he developed during that, the theories that he furthered during that time. And he developed something called logotherapy. Well, logotherapy is based off of a Greek word, and it means healing through meaning. So it's a psychological theory or psychological practice that he developed that focuses on your meaning, your meaning in life, Man's Search for Meaning, which is the name of the book, right? As a form of therapy. That when you know what this little challenge in front of you is going to get you long term, even though it may be hard, it may be challenging, it's worth it because it gets you to this bigger goal versus and it doesn't. So I'm going to make a really bland, probably way too bland for the seriousness of the topic we have, but it's going to be what I do. You're on a diet. You're trying to lose weight. You've got a choice between a salad and a pizza. Okay. Well, in the moment, most people are going to choose the pizza because it's probably going to taste better. Don't get me wrong. I like salads. I'd actually choose both because maybe one less slice of pizza and a salad to go with it, whatever. When you're only worried about the goal in front of you, I want to lose 10 pounds by tomorrow. You're not going to lose 10 pounds by tomorrow. That choice isn't going to push you needle one way too strong or the other. So you're going to go with what tastes good. But when you're focused on losing weight, 30, 60, 90 days down the road, and you know that if you make this decision today, and you make this decision tomorrow, and you make this decision the next day, you will lose that weight that you're looking to lose. Same thing with exercising, right? Same in the same world of analogies there. I don't want to go walk on the treadmill. And one day of walking the treadmill is not going to change my health. But if I do it today, and I do it tomorrow, and I do it 5 days a week, and I do a half hour, and I do 1.5 miles on the treadmill 5 days a week, I'm going to get healthier. I'm going to lose the weight that I want to lose because I'm focused on the long-term picture. It's more than that. Why do I want to lose weight? Right? It's not just the goal of losing weight. That's a goal. That's great. It's a great goal. The short-term goal to eat better today, long-term goal to eat better long-term. Why? And that's logotherapy. Why? Why do I want to be healthier? Selfishly, I want to feel better. I want to have more energy. I want to have more stamina. I want to be able to do more. I want to be there for my family. I want to live a long life to help my family through all the challenges that will come in the future. I want to be happy. Right? Like those are the reasons. And I'm still figuring out all those reasons. Why? Why? That's what logotherapy is. And I think it's brilliant. So I'm going to go through a couple quotes from the book and some of the theories from the book. But again, really good, really heavy reading, but fantastic. So some of the theories, we always retain the ability to choose our attitude. So he goes through in the book and he talks about how, these people around him were just literally starving to death or they were just giving up. And he said, you could literally see the moment when one of the other prisoners would just give up. And once they gave up, he said it was days, hours to days. Once they stopped, they just didn't want to get up that morning or whatever it is. That's when they were gone. It was hours to days. But the ones that just said, I have a bigger picture. I want to go see my love. I want to, in his case, I want to get my memoirs out. I want to write, get this bigger picture stuff out. That gave him the purpose and the meaning to survive almost anything, right? So we always retain the ability to choose our attitude. That's impactful, right? Bad things happen. What we do in response to those bad things, that is what really matters. And something I'm personally working on right now is, yes, you could have an initial knee-jerk bad reaction to something. Somebody cut you off driving. You can have that reaction. Is it better if you don't? Sure, absolutely. But it's okay if you do, but you got to be able to stop it, shut it off, and move on and not let it linger, right? Choose our attitude. Yes, I can be angry in that moment, and maybe I didn't choose that, but I can choose to stay angry or not. And that's something I'm personally working on. There will be suffering. It's how we react to suffering that counts. And the same thing, right? There will be suffering. Life is not peaches and roses, sunshine and rainbows. It's not. There are great moments. There are hard moments. There are challenging moments. There are victories. There are losses, right? There will be suffering. It's how we react to suffering that counts. Again, we've talked about the power of purpose. The true test of our character is revealed in how we act or how we react to things, right? One of my sayings in life, it's not the mistakes that we make in life that define our character or define who we are. It's what we do in response to those mistakes. Do we own up to them? Do we say, hey, that was on me. How do I make this better? Or do we try to sweep it under the rug and pretend like it didn't happen? The last one, human kindness can be found in the most surprising places. So he talks about in the book how he would, all of a sudden have these relationships with the guards that were there to hurt them. And they would have these relationships like one-on-one outside of the scope, like other human beings talking to human beings. So relationships can be anywhere. Human kindness can be found anywhere. So what are some of these quotes? I think some of these are great. Everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way, right? Everything can be taken from a man except for their choice of attitude. How do they respond to the things in front of them? When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. That's a big one. When we are no longer able to change a situation, can't change what's happening. We change ourselves to adapt to the situation. That one is huge. Those who have a why to live can bear with almost any how. Awesome. This one's great too. It's a little bit longer. Don't aim at success. The more you aim at it and make it a target, the more you're going to miss it. For success, like happiness, cannot be pursued. It must ensue. And it only does so as the unintended side effect of one's personal dedication to a cause greater than oneself, or as a byproduct of one's surrender to a person other than oneself. Happiness must happen, and the same holds for success. You have to let it happen by not caring about it. I want you to listen to what your conscience commands you to do and go on to carry it out to the best of your knowledge. Then you will live to see that in the long run, I say, success will follow you precisely because you had forgotten to think about it. I'm gonna let that one marinate for a second. So I remember this when I got into real estate and I was coming out of a, very low income situation, going into a 100% commission role, which was still where I was in a low income situation. And with real estate, especially back in 2011, you were looking at 60, 90 plus days from starting work till, some commission might start rolling in. And I knew I was very low income. And if I think about the money and I think about how much I can profit from each one of these transactions, I'm going to drive myself nuts. And I'm not going to do the best job. I'm going to focus on the relationships and build those relationships. And I trust that if I do that, the money will follow. And it took a while. I sold 2 houses my first 6 months. But that first calendar year, the next 12 months after that, I sold 49 transactions, which was in 2012 an unbelievable number. Nobody could believe it. But it was because I didn't focus on the dollars and success. I focused on relationships. Sometimes we got to go back and reteach ourselves things that we may have accidentally known or came about because I knew I was going to drive myself nuts if I focused on the money. That's why I did it. But it goes back to my ethos. I care about the relationships and I trust that a relationship will feed you numerous times, not just the one time. But there was no need to be ashamed of tears, for tears bore witness that a man had the greatest of courage, the courage to suffer. Man, is that a good one. So I'm going to stop there. I highly recommend it. Some of these quotes are just absolutely fantastic. I'm going to end with two more actually. A man's concern, even his despair over the worthwhileness of life, is an existential distress, but by no means a mental disease. So if you're struggling with what your meaning is, that doesn't mean you're mentally diseased. It's normal, right? Like, it's existential distress, but it's not a mental disease. It's a part of life. And I'll just end on a slightly better note. It is well known that humor, more than anything else in the human makeup, can afford an aloofness and an ability to rise above any situation, even if only for a few seconds. You think about all the comedians that have mental health issues, and they used humor as a way to cover that up. I know that in stressful moments, I do that as well. Lighten the load, lighten the situation by using humor. But he's right. It can be something to take you out of a bad spot, bring you light, even if just for a few seconds. It's the spice of life. That happiness, you'll find that happiness when you stop looking for it, when you just start dedicating yourself to something bigger than you. This has been Birdseeds. I highly recommend you check out Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. Hope this episode has given you some insight. I hope it's been beneficial to you. Thank you so much for listening. Have a wonderful day.